Hey everybody, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching Disruptive Investing.
Today we're going to be talking with Allen Bonk, the CEO and co-founder of Lytehorse.
Yeah, this is a EV startup that you're going to want to hear about. Well, Allen, thanks so much for being with us today here on Disruptive Investing. I guess the first question that just came at me because I was looking at your website a few minutes ago is you say that if Mad Max and Tesla had a baby, you would have the LyteHorse. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, that's kind of true. That's a really good pitch for what it is. Can you tell us where you came up with this idea for the LyteHorse to begin with?
Yeah, the little moniker or phrase really does fit with LyteHorse. And how we came up with it was about 2.5 years ago. My brother surprised me by sending me a text with this picture of a little yellow, call it a scooter, if you will, that he had gotten the idea from the golf board, which is a product that's out there and it's used exclusively on golf courses. It's built on a skateboard chassis. It's electric and it has 4 wheels, but the challenge with it is you have to weight shift to steer it. And so Brad was looking at that and going, well, that's not something I want to do when I'm 55 years old. That's okay for the 20 somethings, but not for me. So what could I build that would be, maybe easier to manage and maneuver than that? So anyway, he didn't tell me, as he often doesn't. He just keeps these things to himself, and then he likes to shock me. So he did. He said, I go, what the heck is that? What on earth have you done here? And so this little yellow machine with a washing machine electric motor on it and a battery and a little controller, and you stood on it and you could steer it with the handlebar, but it was a vertical riding machine that you stood on. And so I go, that's curious. Well, why don't you send it out? I'm an avid golfer, and I thought, let's test it out on the golf course. I was living on Vancouver Island at the time, and so he crated it up, shipped it out, jumped on a plane, followed it, and we went out and took it out on the golf course close to home, and gosh, it was really cool. But I started thinking, the golf niche, although cool and something I'm very fond of, is a difficult market because the golf industry typically stays flat. You have as much attrition with people leaving as you do people starting the game every year. And so it never really grows. And the idea of being able to do more with this machine started to kind of take over my brain. So I said to him as we were out on the golf course, I said, you know what, let's go out to the parking lot. I have my SUV out there and it was 5,000 pounds. And I said, let's just hook it up to the SUV and see if it can maybe pull it. So sure enough, the silly thing pulled my SUV around this parking lot. And I'm like, okay, now we have something with more utility and more applications than just golf. So maybe we can turn this into a business. And so the next iteration was something completely different than the first one. And it was, in my view, transformative because as I started to research the space, the EV space out there, there was really nothing in the world that was utilitarian that you could stand on and electric, right? So the prerequisites, it's got to be electric, obviously, no emissions, no noise. And what could it be used for? So as the next iteration of design evolved, the apparent uses just kind of jumped out at me. So I'm looking at now law enforcement and warehouse use for moving people around in an Amazon fulfillment center. Instead of them riding a bike around to go pick stock, just jump on the LyteHorse. And it's so easy because all you have to do is step on and step off. There's no climbing, there's no straddling, there's none of that. It's just super easy to get on and off it. And it's very nimble, so it goes wherever you want it to go.
So why did you choose EV? Had you been interested in other forms of electric vehicles before this yellow contraption?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is no. It just became obvious that, so when Brad basically tried to create his own rendition of the golf board, that was electric. So this was electric, but he intuitively knew that on the golf course, as I do, I like electric golf carts way better than gas-powered ones because the experience is much more pleasurable. You don't have the stink and you don't have the noise, right? So we decided to go down that path, and neither one of us really knew what we were doing on that side. But the more I researched, the more I realized this was a niche that wasn't being filled.
Now, a lot of new e-mobility devices that we see being designed seem to be focused on metro areas, like urban design. And what I thought was really cool about LyteHorse is it seems to me like you guys came at it from, being up in Canada. Like it looks like it's rugged and it can do all sorts of cool back roads, sports kind of stuff. But then what really caught me is that it can do a lot of urban stuff. Like the fact that you guys can go up and down stairs in this thing. Did, coming from Canada kind of influence your design?
That's an interesting question. I would have to say that where we live didn't necessarily influence the design. I think it was more of what are the potential applications for this. And the more we got into it, the more we realized that it has such a wide variety of uses with the same form factor to go from police to military to warehouse use is really paint and accessories. That's the cool part about our design, is it's so uniquely built that it applies to those market verticals so easily that it's like it was made just for them. And that's one of the really cool parts about the LyteHorse. So just to quickly extrapolate, so for example, on the military version, we've designed a V-shaped skid plate underneath that will be IED resistant. And that's one of the huge pain points of the military is soldiers, when they're traveling down these roads in parts of the world unknown, and they hit an IED, for example, in a Humvee, the soldier has nowhere to escape. So they have to absorb the concussion. They have to absorb the blast. And that's why they get hurt or killed so badly. But with the LyteHorse, the way we've designed this V-shaped skid plate, it's going to diffuse the strength of the bomb, and it will have the effect of ejecting the soldier as opposed to containing him in a steel cage where he can't escape. So he may still get hurt, but my guess is he's going to be alive. Policing, for example, the deck height of the LyteHorse is 17 inches off the ground. So that takes a 6-foot police officer and makes him just shy of 8 feet. Well, now you're approaching sitting on a percheron, right? And you got way less maintenance, cost, and you don't have to carry a shovel behind the LyteHorse where you do a real horse, right? And their vantage point is huge. They got very quick to deploy a LyteHorse as opposed to a real horse, and no training for the rider. You just step on and go.
So before we get into talking about all of the different applications, let's just go through the specs of the LyteHorse.
Yeah, so let's see, weight-wise, what's it come in at? What's it weigh in at?
So it's going to be right around 600 to 650. It depends on how it's configured with the battery packs.
What's the range going to be like? I guess it depends on what battery pack you get.
We made a strategic decision before Christmas to build our own battery packs, because as you guys know, the battery world out there for electric vehicles is a bit disparate. Over here, you got electric bicycles. Over here, you got electric cars. And there's not a lot in the middle. So were we to go to a battery house and say, hey, can you design and build this battery for us? Number one, the cost would be higher significantly upfront to engineer it and ongoing to buy them. And then we've got the supply chain issue of, well, they have 200 other customers besides LyteHorse, right? So we decided to build our own, and then it would be built exactly to our specs. So our battery packs, we're calling them light packs, right? LYTE. So the light pack is a 2.5 kilowatt hour pack that will give us between 20 and 25 miles of range per pack. And the machine itself, in the form factor that you see on the website, contains up to four. So you can have 1 to 4. So you're going to get somewhere in the 80 to 90 mile range. To address the concerns about more range potentially, you guys know what a Pelican box is, those big heavy black boxes you carry camera gear and that. So we we'll be mounting one of those on the rear of the machine, and that will hold 4 to 6 more packs, all hardwired in. And then we have a trailer accessory that we built with a sliding tray on the frame of it that's all sealed, and that will hold 8 battery packs. You could literally be at 500 miles. And in bush talk, that's 2 to 3 weeks of being gone.
Wow. I mean, that would work out perfectly if, like, a game warden, for instance, that just had to go into the wilds and be gone for a while. Like, wow.
I wonder if you can add solar to that sort of system.
That's a great question, and I hear that a lot. The challenge with solar is it's so slow, and for the size of the panel that we would need to actually create usable, viable additional power, it wouldn't be really conducive. I've looked at a trailer application with a couple of folding panels on it, but the end result is it's nominal in terms of the increased range that you would get from that.
Jesse's going to push that, I'm sure, though, at some point.
I'm sure you can, futz around with that, just electrons or whatever. So let's talk about max speed.
Speed, yes. One of my favorite subjects on that one. So the LyteHorse is incredibly stable, and that's due to the offset wheel design that we've created in it. So the front wheels are 45 inches, the rear wheels are 35 inches outside to outside. And so you've got this offset design, and they sort of behave like outriggers on a canoe. So if you envision, turning a corner, it's really difficult to tip it over. I mean, somebody's probably going to find a way to do that. I have no doubt. But it's very challenging to tip it over, and it's almost impossible to push it over with one guy, because you kind of have to push it sort of rear to the side. And when wheels are parallel in line with each other, it will tip, right? If it's on a side hill, it will fall over if the angle's too extreme. With the LyteHorse, not the case. Very, very difficult to tip it over. So that was the first thing. It had to be safe. So once we knew it was super safe and stable, then we could go crazy on the speed, right? So I have personally had our LyteHorse demo prototype up to 55 miles an hour. And I'm like, wow, I could still go faster. But you know what? I'm standing on this thing. So maybe I'm going to just, cut it back and not push the envelope. So we've set the max speed at 40 miles an hour, which is 77 kilometers an hour for those of you in Canada.
And so you said that there's a trailer attachment. How much can it tow?
Well, if you go to the website, you'll see a video in our gallery that shows it pulling an 18,000-pound motorhome and dragging it down the road and accelerating as it goes. So that was from a dead pull. You'll see in the video there was no, let's get a tug going with some slack in the strap. No, it was absolutely dead flat, dead pull. And the machine will pull a lot. Now that's not recommended daily usage, obviously, but it'll handle 1,000, 1,500 pounds like it's not even there.
Wow. So, I mean, talking about using it in a manufacturing setting, like in a factory or a Amazon warehouse, like that's perfect for moving around stuff.
Yeah, indeed. It's brilliant that way. It's got massive torque because that's what electric motors do. And in our design, and you were maybe going to ask me this, but we have 4 independent electric motors on each machine, one in each hub. So there is no drivetrain, there's no drive line, there is only the motors. So the cool thing about that is there's 12,000 watts of power and peaks much higher than that. So crazy torque. But the cool thing is if you're in the bush and you happen to, if you're on a quad, let's say, and you're in the woods, 5 miles from anywhere, and you have a driveline component fail or a gear fail in the transfer case, you're walking out. Right? On the LyteHorse, you could lose up to 3 motors for whatever reason and still get home.
Wow. Because, I mean, just to put this in perspective for viewers who are watching and they can't picture what 12,000 watts is, a lot of our e-bikes that we ride on are like 500 to 750 watts, and that's a lot of power.
Those are the high-end,
right, those are high-end bikes.
E-bikes. So this is like the ultimate, not really electric scooter because it's stable, like you said. So it's not like a toy where you're,
right,
on your Razor scooter. This is you're able to stand on it like a platform. There's not too many things that are like this in the world that you can drive. You're either sitting, or you're standing on a two-wheeled thing, or you're on a bike.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all I can think of would be like a Segway, but those, have to have a lot of stabilization and there's a lot of training that goes into it. Whereas I can imagine just stepping onto this and knowing how to use it.
Yeah, the Segway, and I'm glad you brought that up. You probably know that they're out of manufacturing. They've stopped manufacturing those back June of last year because of the litigation. The challenge with them is, I love the brilliance behind the design because it is really super cool. But the applications are very limited. If you're using it in an airport on marble floors, it's great. But the minute you put it in the real world where there's potholes and curbs and things like that, that's where it gets into trouble real fast. But the LyteHorse eats that stuff up. It is not, use the word scooter, because I used the word scooter early on in the conversation. But the LyteHorse, one of the things that everybody says that's seen it on the website or in video and then sees it in real life, they go, oh my gosh, this thing is way bigger than I thought. So you can't get the scale from the pictures.
Right. Because, I mean, when you don't have a good representation of what that thing might be, it's very hard. Like when you're designing things in CAD, for example, for any engineers watching, you're like, oh, perfect, that'll be great. And then you finally 3D print it or, see it at scale and you're like, oh, that's way smaller than I thought it was going to be. So it's nice to have a physical representation of what you're talking about. And I can attest to, falling off of Segways. I think I hit a rock, maybe this big. And it can send you for a loop because the control system is not inherently stable.
Right.
It's inherently unstable, whereas the LyteHorse, you're inherently stable.
Right. And I mean, I want to go to some of the use cases here. So let's talk about for policing. I feel like there really isn't anything like this because if you tried to use a Segway as a police officer, like you said, that you'd have to be policing a world that's perfectly flat, and it's not. And so if you wanted to go help someone quickly or chase after someone and there's a curb in your way or a pothole, like you said, then that doesn't work.
Right. Or someone throws down their jacket to try and escape you, you're going to be in trouble. Whereas on this thing, the jacket's not going to be.
And what I like about this is it puts the police officer back in the real world. Instead of being in a box, of a car or someplace, not only can they get around in crowds and so forth, but they're very personable, I would think, because they're right there.
Yeah, with the community policing aspect becoming more and more important these days to connect with your community, the LyteHorse, very correctly, is a dream for that environment because, when you're in a steel shell surrounded by glass, that you can't connect with your community. Motorcycle officers do not want to get off their bikes. It's way too much work to do that. Time you pull over, kick the kickstand, point the handlebars, swing your leg over with your 40-pound belt on. It's just too much work. And bicycles, the same thing. You can't connect because you're moving too fast and they, again, don't want to stop. But on the LyteHorse, you can literally crawl 1 mile an hour and talk to somebody as they're walking very easily. And the cool thing about the LyteHorse is because it is such a unique looking machine, they flock to it. And it's like, wow, what is that? What a great conversation starter that is, right? Just the intrigue of what the machine actually looks like. Draws a crowd. So it's going to be awesome. And we can't wait to get it into testing to prove that out.
When we go to military applications, it seems like this makes a soldier into like a super soldier. The fact that they can go really fast, they can carry loads, they could probably carry a fallen comrade out of a building or something. And the fact that they can get this thing in and around very tight spaces, like in urban environments, that just seems like the first time I've ever seen anything kind of offered in this space.
Yeah, and funny story. I don't know if you've ever seen the television show SEAL Team. It's a really good, very, very well done, well written. And about a month ago, I was watching an episode, and there was this terrorist insurgent encampment in this valley between these mountains. And the SEAL team went in. There's 8 of them, and they were all on quads, right? And showed them trucking up this mountain trail and then having to stop and put camouflage over and then hike in, hoof it for about a kilometer because of the noise, right? So now they get into that scenario, and who knows what's going to happen if you get into a hot zone and there's a gunfight, and they have to escape quickly. Well, they got to run all the way back to their quads, 1K, carrying these 50-pound packs, and all the adrenaline that goes with it. With the LyteHorse, none of that is an issue. You could get to within 50 yards, and they would never know you're there.
That's really interesting, and that would also be true, like in a game warden case, right?
Totally.
Yeah, because normally you're gonna, take your 4x4 or whatever, but then you're gonna have to stop, walk the rest of the way because you don't want to let them know that you're there. But here, right, they're quiet.
Yeah. So game wardens in the state of Maine patrol. They do the grow ops as well because there's so much bush there. There's so much opportunity, for people to do that off in the woods and never get caught. While they get tips sometimes, and so, if it's 3 or 4 miles in, they actually have to hike it in. Carry their rifle over their backpack, walk in. Now that's not only an energy strain, but it's also a time strain, because how long does it take to walk 3 miles both directions, right? So you're taking 2 hours out of somebody's day just walking. Well, that's not efficient or effective. And so the LyteHorse, again, I had an experience with Brad. We were out testing it, and he went down this little trail, and I kept looking for him to come out the other side, and somehow he circled way around behind me, and I didn't hear him until he was literally about 10 feet behind me. He came around, snuck up on me. I'm like, what? Where did you come from? Right? That's how quiet it is. If you're on grass or dirt, you hear nothing. Nothing. Gravel, you're going to hear the tires against, the gravel, but if the terrain is sand, dirt, or grass, weeds, you hear nothing.
Here we're going to show a video showing you that exact point where the LyteHorse is going to go right in front of the camera, and let's see what you can hear. So I heard birds.
The audio was on.
By the way, audio was on. You heard the birds. But yeah, and I think one big reason for this is your design, right? By having hub motors without having a normal, like in a car, you have a geared powertrain with gears that are whirring. I imagine that must keep the sound really, really low.
That's a big part of it. The motors are just incredibly quiet. And, the only sound that you're going to hear is the tires against the surface. That is really it. There's no drive line, that's spinning, no gears, like you said. And so, yeah, it's just super quiet.
So now I have a question as to the design. Why do you have the rider standing as opposed to sitting on something? Wouldn't it be more comfortable?
Great question. And we actually have and offer both. So that back butt rest that you see on the website in some of the images of the LyteHorse stabilizes and provides support to your lower back and or your butt, depending on which level you're standing on the deck. And so that gives you a real sense of stability, because if you accelerate hard, as with electric vehicles, that throws you back in your seat, right? And if there's no support there, you better be hanging on, right? That same butt rest in about 30 seconds converts into a seat. So you can actually sit and take the strain off your legs entirely if you choose to.
That's really cool.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. So that gives, there's really no argument for whatever you're comfortable with.
And now also on your website, I see that you can just attach lots and lots of different things to the LyteHorse itself without having to get a trailer. What kind of options do you have for that?
Yeah. So another great question. So the accessory side of the LyteHorse, we've designed it to be all modular. So what I mean by that is the mounting system for it to mount on the vehicle is universal, whether or not it's a Pelican box or a gear rack or a different configuration of a gear rack or a jump seat for search and rescue, rear facing. All of those change out in literally seconds. So the machine becomes a completely different use case and application just by changing out the accessory.
So I noticed that there's like two separate places to put your feet. What's that all about?
The deck design of the LyteHorse, there's that top deck that you can stand on when you want that vantage point. but you can also lower yourself down to the footboards. And we designed those ergonomically so they're 4 degrees upright, so that when you're standing on those, your ankle architecture is all as it should be, and no strain on it of any kind, but lowering yourself distributes your weight and lowers your center of gravity. So you are able to manhandle and manipulate that machine much like a snowmobile. It's really cool, and it's a lot of fun, and it just gives you this total feeling of control with the machine because of that. So that adds to the safety and the stability by lowering yourself. You get into a tenuous terrain situation where there's lots of bumps and rocks and things like that, you definitely want to lower yourself. You don't want to be on that top deck.
I really am excited about your company because you have these actual prototypes. We've seen them being ridden. You've tested them. You've actually gone through many iterations. So you're not just one of these companies that shows some fancy CGI and Jesse has to tell me it's fake and not real. But now you're getting into production, right? And I know for a lot of companies, this is a really tough part because you've already gone through a hard iterations phase. Now you have to go to production, keep the costs down, get production levels up. Can you tell us where you're at right now in that phase?
Yeah, so we just moved into our new facility here in Regina, and it's 11,500 square feet. So we have about 1,800 of that is office space, administration space, and the balance is for production. So we'll be in production by May. So we have frames being built as we speak, and these are the first frames. So we're not building the frame ourselves because I didn't want a dirty, metal cutting, grinding, welding environment in this building because of the sophistication of the electronics, the controllers, all the batteries. Building those ourselves, we need a really clean space. So we opted to have the frame outsourced. And so we have a company in Ontario that's building those as we speak. And then we have our manufacturing partner in the US, Mako International, who can scale for us. So at the Regina facility, just to kind of give you the lay of the land, we'll be able to produce about 200 machines a month. Mako, our partner down there, is at about 1,400 a week. So massive distinction there when it comes to scaling for the military or large, government or institutional type requirements. So they are also giving us a showroom. They're in Detroit, Arlington Heights, actually, and they will give us a showroom. So it's going to be the LyteHorse Customer Experience Center for the United States, and they just happen to have a 6-acre wooded area on their property that's got trails in it that will be the place where people can actually go there, see them, and ride and test.
I'm imagining that a lot of people watching right now want to get their hands on a LyteHorse. I know that I do. I knew that I did as soon as I saw it. How can people reserve one, get one? If they're a police chief, how can they get some for their department?
Yeah, great questions. On the website, if anybody goes there, there's a big green reserve button. So anybody can reserve one for $100. And that's just them raising their hand saying, yes, I'm interested. And if they change their mind, it's fully refundable. So we're not in the business of taking reservation money to operate on. We want to sell machines, right? And so the consumer, absolutely, that is the way to go. So it's just an expression of interest, and we'll reach out to them and have a conversation about accessories and what color they want and what kind of wheels they want and that sort of thing. Any sort of government or institutional requirements, they would need to just contact us directly, and our email is right on the website at the bottom on the left-hand corner. Just ridehire@lytehorse.com.
Have you had any interest yet from municipalities or from governments or from military?
We have, only because of some conversations that have been going on in the background, but we don't actually start our marketing until the first week of April. So as soon as that kicks in, then look out. We anticipate we're going to be inundated with conversations happening.
Now, people who are watching now who are like, okay, I am really excited, but I don't know what this thing costs. Can you give us some idea of where the starting price is?
Yeah, so the starting price for what we call the Little Joe, which is the warehouse commercial / golf version, is starting at $89.97 US. And it goes on up from there. The military ones are going to be much higher because of the added features. They're going to be throwing them out of airplanes, and parachute hooks and all that sort of thing will be on them.
Slow down.
I want to wait. So I wasn't thinking about throwing these out of airplanes, I was thinking of drive. So what's walk me through your ideal LyteHorse based operation?
Well, so we have one of our advisors is ex 82nd Airborne veteran, did 2 tours, and he is very well connected in the military. He spent 2 years at West Point going through aerospace engineering, and he believes the LyteHorse is a game changer for light infantry and forward deployment. So the way that we viewed it, we took a look at, okay, what do they have now? So you all are familiar with the Hercules aircraft. Well, the Hercules surprisingly only holds 3 Humvees, okay? Because of the weight, they're 8,000 pounds a piece plus gear. And space-wise, there only is room for 3. So if you take that same cubic volume and you put LyteHorses in that same cubic space, you have 24 LyteHorses. So the deployment opportunities are massive compared to going in 3 directions with 3 Humvees. You're now able to go in 24 different directions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like just thinking right now, if I'm Michael Bay or some Hollywood director, I would want to use these just in my next film, just from the fact that like if an enemy sees 3 Humvees coming, that's one thing, but if you see 24 troops all just going in every which way,
you don't see the 24.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
You don't hear them either.
Right, you don't hear or see them, and if you see one,
they've got night vision on.
Well, and I also want to just because I've been playing enough military simulators games. What's the thermal aspect of this look like, compared to a Humvee?
Another great question, and I love where you guys are going. The thermal issues of the LyteHorse are pretty nominal. You're going to generate a little bit of heat from the motors, but nothing that's really going to be detected as a threat. And of course, the human body will be on there. So, but nothing like like a vehicle, like a Humvee, for example, where you're running an engine at 200 degrees and nothing like that. So the heat signature is very nominal.
So what do the next couple of years look like for LyteHorse? It looks like you've gotten through a lot of the sticky bits for most companies, and now it sounds like the next part is what we're doing now, which is getting the word out. If we're right and people are going to be as excited as we are about it, that doesn't seem like the hard part either. So what does it look like for the next couple of years for you guys? What are you guys going to be working on?
Well, our projections are pretty aggressive. I'm always stunned when I look at them. There's just so many applications that the numbers add up so quickly, even though we're very conservative in each segment right now. But we're looking at a large number of units being sold from June to May of this year, which is our fiscal year. And after that, the numbers get even more insane. So by year 5, we're up to 20,000 units a year.
That's awesome. So now we're on an investing channel here. There's a lot of people watching who love to invest in new disruptive technologies like this. When's your next round, and is it going to be the kind of round that private investors can get involved in? Is there any talk of maybe a crowdfunding round?
I don't think we're going to go to the crowdfunding path. We are now just going to start, I would say by the end of March, we'll be into our second round, our A raise, and that will carry us for probably till late fall. And then the path that we're going to go down, it looks like, is an RTO, reverse takeover. So that's like sort of a layer below an IPO, which is more cost intensive and more complex. The RTO is a great way to go. So that means we're going to be listed on probably the TSX Venture Exchange. But that won't happen until the end of the year. So if anybody is interested in an investment, we would connect them with the group that is managing investment in LyteHorse, and they can have those conversations. But now is a great time. So this next raise is going to be about $2.5 million. And the valuation is what's being determined at the moment. So we just closed a convertible note round. That one's over. And we oversubscribed by 100%. So there's obviously interest in what we're doing. And then so this next raise, it's still going to be a fantastic opportunity for people to get involved in.
So now I just want to ask a stupid question, and it's a very stupid question. So like, if you approached this project maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, and there were no, battery electric vehicles to, think of, and if you had to make, a battery electric version of the LyteHorse, you could only use big lead acid batteries, you probably wouldn't do it. So you'd probably be thinking, gas powered or something like that. Is that even like a consideration? Are there so many downsides to a gas burning version that you would never consider doing a LyteHorse?
Yeah, we wouldn't if we couldn't build. I mean, the technology is at a place today where we do have access to great, battery opportunities that weren't available 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So the whole idea of a LyteHorse is the modern day interpretation of the horse, right? And that doesn't even make sense if it's fossil fuel powered, right? And the dirt, the sound, that all of the challenges with potential failure. One of the things about the LyteHorse is we have very few moving parts, 34 to be exact. Well, that's less than a typical bicycle. Because of that, there's zero maintenance on the machine, like none, and that cannot be said ever for a fossil fuel powered machine. You got filters and gas and oil to change, and all kinds of things that potentially will break, and not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? So the LyteHorse is just a completely different design philosophy, and we wouldn't do it if it had to be gas powered.
I mean, we've had snow blowers and lawnmowers that were gas powered in the past years, and almost every year had to bring them in for repair and service. I guess service is a big question for a lot of people, but you kind of answered it there. There's so few moving parts that service isn't really the same as it would be on an ATV or something. But to those people who are going to ask, okay, well, what happens if I have a problem? How do you get it fixed? How, what does service look like with the LyteHorse?
Well, right now, service, because we don't have a wide net distribution-wise, the fact that it's so failure-proof, I guess, if you will, means that we don't anticipate a whole lot of challenges with that. But in the short term, while we get our dealer network and distribution network built up, we're going to have to get creative in how we address those things. So, it could be as easy as calling up a local dealer wherever the customer is and saying, hey, would you mind, if they brought this in, could you fix it? We'll walk you through it, right? That's going to be the approach in the near term, for sure. And then as, our distribution network gets wider, then they just take it in probably where they bought it.
So people who are getting excited here want to put some money down maybe on one. Is there a certain place that will get them first? Like if people are in Europe, are they eligible to get them, or is it only the U.S. first?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up because this week we have a pending sale for 10 units to Russia, of all places.
With the 500-mile range, I'm not too excited, not too surprised.
And they want to use it for agriculture. They think that's going to be a big deal out there for roaring around and, moving augers and things like that. That are typically a pain in the butt if you have to back a truck up to all the time. And this thing you just get on and you go and it's easy.
That's another market that we haven't even discussed. I mean, farmers, a lot of farmers have ATVs to put around the farm with.
And this is really narrow. It can get between all the, the fields.
Yeah.
Well, and think of the cattle herds. Like if you try to drive a quad into a cattle herd because you want to check out the herd and see, that everything's good, they scatter. With the LyteHorse, they'll barely know that you're even there.
I mean, and it just brings up so many sub markets. Like, you're mentioning cattle. It could be with horses. Like horses are used to humans standing, and so you're right. They're not going to be freaked out by this because it's quiet. Yeah, this is really, really exciting. I can see a lot of people checking out your website after this video to see what this is all about. It's so great to see the people behind the companies. I think a lot of times when we see these websites, we are just like, is this real? And who are the people doing this? It's so refreshing to get to meet you, the founder of the company, and get to hear how you started it, where you're going with it. We're just so excited to hopefully even get ourselves on one this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure that happens.
That's awesome. Thank you again so much, Allen, for being with us today. Just great to talk to founders of e-mobility companies that are really doing well.
Well, and thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and you asked some great questions, so thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Disruptive Investing. We love bringing you new companies. I mean, I think this might have been the first time on the internet that you might have even heard of LyteHorse.
That's true. We hear about some of these companies from some of our amazing viewers. And honestly, nobody else hears about these companies. When we go to interview these companies, they're like, what do we do? This is the first time I've ever had an interview before. So thank you so much to our awesome viewers who let us know about companies like this. If you want to see more interviews like this, then you should definitely hit the subscribe button and then also the bell notification icon. That way you'll be notified whenever we have a new video released.
Thanks so much for joining us on Disruptive Investing.